It's always good to check in with your friends and peers every now and again. Hi, I'm Thain. Welcome to a code talk that I haven't done for a while, so thank you for rejoining me. I'm really happy to have one of my colleagues and peers, Riley Rainey, with me right now. Riley, thank you for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And as I say, it's nice to I use the term, it's nice to check in with people, because actually what I want to talk to you today on Code Talk is the survey which we did over the last few months and will be coming out soon on blog posts and within the Developer Center. And you were very key to it. So Riley, what was the reason behind the survey?
Yeah, so multiple reasons, actually. I think fundamentally, we want to keep tabs on what people are interested in, what people are doing out in our developer community. And of course, a survey is one piece of a jigsaw puzzle for building knowledge about that. But another piece of this too is to give people a chance to get a look at what the SAP community looks like. Thomas Grassel calls this looking left and looking right, but a key part of the community and having people participate in it and understand what's going on in it is to have some view of what the other people are up to in here. So we have both an internal version of this survey where we take all the questions that we ask and collate them and rummage through to look for things that might be interesting for us internally. But we also publish, and we're, as you said, just about to publish the external version of this report. And that will cover a lot of topics that I think will be interesting to customers and partners.
Okay, so this question really does seem a little bit silly, but to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Who is the focus of our developer survey?
Yeah, well, so maybe the simplest way to answer that is the name says it all, developers. So within the world of SAP and the SAP community, of course, a large portion of those are folks that we would consider to be in development roles. The world of development has gotten a lot bigger, though, over time. So anyone who's involved in constructing software for other people, we would consider to be a developer for our purposes. So folks who visit Developer Center, whether they're classic pro-code developers, like we might call them, or folks like machine learning specialists, data scientists, data engineers, any of those topics that relates to IT in the enterprise or constructing software in the enterprise, that's the people that we want to ask questions to.
You mentioned that it's our developer community. Does the actual survey go a little bit broader than the community? Do you get answers from folks who have really just stumbled across it, maybe through promotions or in fact just coming onto the Developer Center for the first time, who have never seen SAP before?
Well, we do use a number of channels to broadcast on this. The survey runs from basically the beginning of January through February each year. This is the third year that we've run that survey. And we will catch a lot of people through social promotions. We also run something called an intercept on SAP.com, where we have a profile of technical folks that we think that we're looking for, and we'll actually prompt people and ask them, would you be willing to take the survey? The only group that we specifically exclude from this for our purposes are folks that are SAP employees, right? What we're doing internally, we see as very distinct from what's going on in the outside world. And what we're really trying to get here is an external view of who those people that we consider to be developers are and what they're up to. So other than that, everybody is fair game here.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about some of the results, or pick some of the areas. Got to mention the pandemic. Hopefully we are in quite a few countries around the world towards the tail end. We're seeing a little bit of light, well, more than a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. But from the survey, how has the pandemic affected our developers? Is it still affecting them over the, obviously you've had a couple of years of results.
Mm-hmm. We asked a lot of questions about that last year, and you can look at last year's results. I'm sure we'll be able to post a link to that here at the bottom of the screen for everybody. And you can take a look at that report to see what was going on. We did repeat just a few questions this year, and probably the main one was asking folks where they're working from. And what we saw was just above 80% were still working from home day to day. And keep in mind, this is back in the January and February timeframe. But that was interesting. And this is probably one of these places where it pays to be maybe light on our feet, because what we've seen is that there's been a pretty dramatic shift, as you say. Folks coming back to the office, it's happening in different paces in different countries, but because of that, that has shaped some of our strategy for 2022. And I think what you'll see, especially with things going on in community, of course, Sapphire is an example of this. You are seeing people returning to face-to-face get-togethers. We want to support that, though. So this is one area where we did collect data, and you'll see it in our external report. But also, again, we want to respond to changing situations as well. So we are going to emphasize much more face-to-face this year, and get back to that wherever we can.
Excellent. Yeah, and I know that sort of some of our events that our team put together we're trying to do a reboot, but obviously more about that in the future. You've been privy to the whole survey. Anything interesting that sort of that's really caught your eye, caught your imagination, you want to share? Well,
some of it's mundane, but there's little pieces in this that are I think worth mentioning. One is year over year. Of course, we're really focused on what roles people perform, and we look at that not from the point of view of what's their job title, but it's really what hats do you wear. We know that especially with smaller companies, you might wear many hats. You have many roles that you perform. So we ask a key question year over year that basically says, what do you do? And we see that there's a large number of developers out there. 60–70% of our folks say that they do classic software development. But then we've got this long tail of other roles. One of those interesting roles that we're asking about actually for the first time and exploring this year are architects. We see architects fitting in many important ways. One interesting thing that we found in architects is that in the different flavors of architects that are out there, there's actually 3 times as many folks that say they're solution architects, those folks that might be involved in solutioning and taking a business problem and actually translating it into a particular technical pattern. Oh, wow, I lost you there for a second. I'm back.
I've always been here. I've always been here.
But there's like a 3-to-1 ratio of solution architects to enterprise architects. And those enterprise architects, of course, are interesting in other ways too. They're gatekeepers for new technologies that might be approved for use. But there's also, I think, an interesting connection developing there today that folks are starting to look at, say, business technology tools, low code and no code types of tools to help business technologists or citizen developers do things. Those enterprise architects are going to be very important to the governance associated with those kinds of tooling as well. So maybe not a huge surprise year over year in the mix of those folks. But still some interesting things going on.
I find the term citizen developer quite interesting because years ago, in the mobile space, we were talking about the prosumer, which was the professional consumer, which is sort of slightly opposite, but it's on a similar vein. It's like people bring in their devices and their knowledge of mobile devices into business. And now we're saying that, we have sort of people that maybe wouldn't be classed as developers now looking at, as you say, the low code, no code as like a citizen developer. So it's quite interesting, that term.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one thing that's, I think, kind of interesting and relevant about that for us is that we do have a lot of interest in citizen developers. I think a more refined term that even analysts would agree to today is the term business technologist. I think it captures a little bit more about what we're about, which is business. And interestingly, SAP has in traditional ERP and core implementations used business experts, business analysts, functional folks throughout its entire lifetime. But now you're talking about people who aren't necessarily in that core development team in IT. Now you're talking about people who are outside of IT, in the line of business, still a business expert, right? Really, really interested in that. But is there a way to enable those folks? And of course, a lot of announcements around Sapphire and things leading up to that, a lot of focus on tech ed in 2021 around that topic as well. And I think what you're going to see is an evolution of not just inside IT and using those tools for benefit, but also putting it in the hands of folks who might be these business technologists outside of IT and letting them have a go at business problems as well.
Excellent. So what's the ultimate outcome of the survey for our community, the SAP community?
I think there's two things. We have, of course, within community and alongside community, the developer advocates, the folks who are sort of the face of SAP, led by Tom Young, when it comes to development. They face, I think if you walked a week in their shoes, anybody would have a tremendous amount of respect for what they do, because it's constantly having to look at what's coming out new in the SAP world, which is a very rich environment, right? There's a lot going on that relates to developers, but then matching that up to the needs of the developer community itself. This gives us some insights that we can use to help shape how we're allocating resources, and maybe to a lesser extent, help make decisions about week to week what they should focus on. So that's good, right? It helps us have conversations internally, though, also about who this developer audience is, and in a broader sense, how to connect with those folks, how to deliver things that are going to be relevant and help them out. And knowing what the demographics are, not just location-wise, but role-wise, really does a lot of help for us there. But then also, we try to use this as a give back. That's why we publish an external report. That's why we package it in the way that we do, so that a partner or a customer can go in and look at this and see what's going on in the SAP ecosystem. There's a lot of research done by analysts about developers, and you can always go look at that too. But this is something that's very focused on SAP and SAP topics. And in that sense, I think there's some really interesting and rich nuggets there. What individuals are looking for, I think, depends on the context and what you're searching for. But this definitely gives you a very focused view of what the SAP developer community is up to.
Fantastic points there, Riley. Thank you very much. So where eventually, I know it's not out, well, when we're recording this now, it's not out, but where can they actually go and see that full external report?
So it is going to be published, as it is every year, on Developer Center. Thomas Grassel will publish a blog to announce it. By the time that we publish this video, it'll probably be out, and I'm sure we'll post a link at the bottom of the video here as well, to make it easy to get to this year's report and past year reports as well. So take a look at those and have a look. There's a lot of information. And again, the specifics of what somebody might find most interesting will be in any number of the different sections that are in there.
Excellent, Riley. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on today's Code Talk. A re-envisioned Code Talk starting for us here in 2022. And again, look after yourself and keep safe.
Yeah, thank you. You too.